الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Welcome to our last session in our series of Tools of Inner Transformation. Can you hear? Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay.
Shut up, he's better than you.
So today's session is about gaining peace and stability, and we're going to talk about a few steps that we can take to basically have a more peaceful experience in our lives. So, it is about, the destination. It is about that we are returning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but there are many things that we can do to ensure the quality of our experience on our way back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That our whole deen is designed to make sure that our life experience is full of quality, that it is something that we can derive so much peace and stability from. And so our journey here on this earth should be a journey of quality, of peace, of stability, of liberation. And so this conversation about gaining peace and stability today is really just about opening the dialogue and opening the discussion about certain steps that we can take towards improving our quality of life, gaining more peace in our lives, deriving more meaning from our life experience. And so one of our biggest obstacles to peace and stability is that we make happiness the destination. And so one of the reasons we struggle is that we have misunderstood happiness to be something that we arrive at, right? We think that happiness is something that we eventually reach, and that is it. Even in our constitution, it's the pursuit of what? Happiness, right? So happiness being a destination is so ingrained in our collective and cultural mindset. Just think about this. It's always about the next thing that you can do to make you happy, right? It's always about what you can buy to make you happy. It's all about instant gratification, what we can do to always get happiness. So in our collective mindset, in this society, we are programmed to make happiness the destination. And so misunderstanding happiness causes us so much pain. Actually, misunderstanding emotions causes us so much pain. So we must understand that happiness is an emotion. It's just like sadness, it's just like anger, it's just like fear, right? It's an emotional state. And an emotional state is something that comes and goes. It's something that's temporary. It's fleeting, right? So we always put happiness on one end and all of these other emotions on the other end. But in fact, happiness is just like any other emotion. It's something that comes and goes in and out of our lives. It's a state and it's an experience. And our misunderstanding of this concept causes us so much pain and agitation. And we struggle a lot because of this. And so we treat emotions as if they are permanent when their very nature is temporary. And in one day, you can have a variety of emotions, right? So in one day, you can wake up and you can feel happy, right? And then maybe in the middle of the day something agitates you and you have an experience and then you get agitated, you feel upset, frustrated, sad. And then at the end of the day you might be happy again, right? So even in one day you can see how there's a variety of emotions that you can experience. Happiness, sadness, fear, anger, all come in and out of your day. They're temporary, they're fleeting. And so because we make happiness the destination, though, because we group happiness on one side and every other emotion on the other, what we do is that we view anything other than happiness as an intruder, as an enemy into our lives, right? So we look at, if you're not happiness and you're any other emotion, what are you doing here, basically, right? So if sadness comes in our day, if anger comes in our day, or if frustration, if annoyance, whatever it is comes in our day, if it's not happiness, we halt. Because we look at that emotion as an intruder in our lives. And this is because we've misunderstood happiness to be the destination, the ideal situation, right? We made happiness the pedestal of all emotions, right? The ideal situation. This is what it should be all the time. This is our destination. And so everything else becomes almost like an enemy. And when you view those emotions as an intruder into your life, as an enemy, what do? You defend yourself from it. You resist. So you don't even want to let the emotion in. You don't even want to embrace the emotion. You don't even want to deal with the emotion because you look at it as you're intruding into my life right now. You're not happiness. I don't like you, basically. And this is because our feel-good culture promotes this. We equate happiness with good and sadness as bad, right? And so in Islam, this is not the case. In Islam, we're not taught to, look at something that's maybe painful as something that's necessarily bad for us, right? And we know in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Baqarah, but perhaps you hate a thing that is good for you, and perhaps you love a thing that is bad for you, and Allah knows while you know not. So in the Quran, Allah teaches us this idea that just because you're feeling pain right now does not mean that the situation itself is bad for you. Islam teaches us this. But in our feel-good culture, we don't understand this. We think if I'm not happy, then it must be bad for me. We don't say this, we might not verbalize this, but this is an experience that we feel. Now, they teach this concept of understanding emotions this way in many of the therapy approaches. And they utilize a lot the teachings of Rumi. And many people in the West don't know that Rumi's teachings are actually founded upon his love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his love for the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And I want us to take a look at one poem of Rumi where he talks about how to understand and manage these emotions that come in and out of our day. And this poem is called The Guest House. So he starts out by saying, this being human is a guest house. So already he's reminding you that you being human is temporary, right? That this experience of being a human being on this face of the earth, is a temporary experience, right? A guest house is a place that you live in temporarily. It's not your permanent home. So he says this being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. He's telling you that the emotions that come into your day are visitors. Something that's going to come and something that's going to leave. And then he tells you what to do. He says, welcome and entertain them all. Meaning no resistance here, right? Just because it's not happiness, you don't resist, you don't not invite it in. You welcome that emotion, even if you don't like it. So he says, welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows that violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. So no matter how harsh the emotion, how terribly disturbing the emotion, making you empty of everything you've ever known, right? Welcome and entertain that emotion. And he says, still treat each guest honorably, right? You don't treat this emotion badly. You don't resist it. You don't shut it out. You make that emotion an honorable guest. Because, he says next, he doesn't say because, but I'm saying because. He says, he may be clearing you out for some new delight. This emotion that you were about to resist, that you're about to shut the door in its face, actually has some goodness in it for you, right? So he's changing the way that we look at emotions. That embrace it all. You don't know what it has in store for you. So he says, the dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. And finally, he says, be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And I'm going to say this statement again. So he says, be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. He says that each of these emotions, thank you. So he says, be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Every single emotional experience that comes in your life throughout that day, be grateful for it. Because within each one, there's a message for you that comes from beyond, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends us messages through many different ways, right? And he's saying that pay attention to these emotional changes within you, because each of them has a message for you. And so we know that when we have a pain in our physical body, we look at that as a message, right? Because it tells us something about the condition of our body. It tells us that there's something wrong in that specific place, right? And pain is a blessing, because if we don't have pain, we wouldn't know about some serious issues that are going on within our body. So pain is an indicator. It's a message. But we don't view emotional pain the same way. Again, we view anything other than happiness as an intruder. What are you doing? Stop talking to me, basically, right? But pain in our physical body is a message, and we embrace it, and we want to pay attention. We want to know where it is, how often it comes. We want to make sure that we pinpoint exactly, what we're feeling, right? So that we can explain and we can tell the doctor exactly what's going on. We can get a cure. But with emotional pain, we resist and we block it out. But guess what? We also won't get the cure. If you're not willing to take the time to understand the emotion, right, and to embrace it and to accept that it actually exists, then how are you willing to get the healing, the cure, the soothing answer that will calm down that emotion? So going back to Rumi's poem, having this mentality of embracing these emotions as temporary things goes back to understanding exactly what he was saying in the first sentence. It goes back to what he says, this being human is a guest house. So having this mentality, being able to deal with emotions in this way, goes back to how much we truly understand how temporary this world is, how temporary our journey in this world is. It goes back to it. Your ability to manage and regulate your emotions and treat them as temporary things goes back to your belief and your conviction that this world is temporary. And we know it up here. But when I say conviction, I mean your heart believes with all its being that this world is temporary. Which brings me to my next point. Our connection with akhirah, our understanding that our time in this dunya is temporary, has a direct effect on our peace and stability. Because it connects us to the reality of where we're going while making us understand the illusion of where we really exist. And so when I say this, we need to connect to akhirah. We need to make sure that akhirah is the major connection that we have, right? That our connection to akhirah is stronger than our connection with this dunya. A lot of times fears come up that we don't maybe verbally say, but there are fears that come up when we want to take those steps to connect to akhirah and make it a priority. We think that we're going to miss out on this dunya. We think that we're not going to enjoy this dunya. We think that we're not going to be happy, and we're not going to make the best out of it. That train of thought that comes after you wanting to connect to akhirah, number one, is a trick of shaitan. Because he wants always to let you know, or to remind you, or to make you think that you're going to lose out on something when you're about to do something great. It actually has a completely opposite effect when you connect to akhirah. And one of my favorite approaches of psychology, which is existential psychology, it confirms this. Psychology confirms this phenomena. Where existential psychology says this is a whole complete approach to understanding why people struggle. And it says we struggle because we cannot come to terms with our purpose, with our existence, and with our death. So it's basically saying there's a natural struggle that occurs within us on an emotional and mental level when we ignore the temporary nature of our existence, when we ignore that we die. And that actually embracing the fact that we will die someday, embracing our temporary nature, it awakens the way we live our life. This is what happens. Now, they're not talking about Islam. They're not talking about a Muslim who does this. They're talking about any human being who comes to terms with the fact that this life is temporary and that they're going to die. is that something happens within the way that they approach life. It actually awakens them. It inspires them. And it makes them want to make the most out of their life. And so think about it. The more temporary something is, the more we put value on it, right? Think about when you go on vacation. You know, you are there for a temporary time. You make the most out of that vacation. You, even if you're tired, you schedule events, you schedule activities. You want to say that when you get back home that you made the most out of that time, right? Because why? It's temporary. You know there's a beginning and you know there's an end. And so, and the things that, subhanAllah, we're deceived to think that they are with us all the time, we take for granted. Like, you know, so a lot of times we take our family for granted because they're always there, right? As opposed to maybe someone we think that we're going to lose, or someone that's going to come in and out of our lives. We might give them more priority than maybe our family. So we, as human beings, we put more value towards something that we know is temporary. So there's a whole therapy approach dedicated to helping people come to terms with their existence and with their purpose. And why? Because our inability to do so causes chaos. It causes disturbance. And so, you know, there's a concept in this, you know, existential psychology that says die before you die, right? So basically, come to terms with your death before death comes to you. And subhanAllah, I think of how, you know, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us of akhirah, it's designed to wake us up before we're forced to wake up, right? That coming to terms with akhirah and where we're going is supposed to wake us up before our actual awakening. And so this reminder of akhirah constantly, you know, in in the Islamic teachings, in the Quran and the Hadith, why? Is because it's your purpose, and it's because there is a reality that you're going to meet, but it also is because it benefits your present. And a lot of times we ignore it because, again, we allow shaitan to make us think that the more I attach to akhirah, the more I'm going to lose out on this dunya. But it actually benefits you mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. It benefits you on all different levels. So, you know, when we're trained in this approach of therapy, we're given examples, and I've seen examples like this in my experience as well, where, you know, a client will come in and they will have, you know, you'll ask them what brings them to therapy, basically, and they won't really have anything that was like any issues that they can pinpoint. So you'll ask them, you know, how's your marriage? It's great. Any disturbance in your relationships? No disturbances there. Everything good with your kids? Yeah, everything is fine, right? So what is it? Well, why are you here, basically? So they'll say, like, you know, I feel a void. I feel like there's something missing from my life. There's an emptiness. So even though they don't have anything, any crisis or any disturbance or anything that they can pinpoint in the core areas of their life, there's something there. And again, it goes back to not coming to terms with our existence. Because think about it, you're either in a state of wanting, right? You're either in a state where you're wanting something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you get what you want and then you're in a state of fearing that you're going to lose that thing, right? So even when you have everything that you want, you're still in a state of, you know, uh-oh, what if I lose this? Okay, what's next? You know, that's the nature of the human being. And think about, yani, when I get clients like this, you know, I think of how lucky we are to have Islam. I mean, Islam is a comprehensive system designed to tell you about your existence. Why are you here? Where are you going? When you experience trouble and when you experience happiness. And when you have everything going chaotically, it explains to you how to interpret it, right? And when you have everything going well, it reminds you of a greater place, right? Your destination. It keeps you going, right? It has given you your beginning, your end, and your middle. And it has answered these existential questions that even though people don't talk about in the mainstream, they don't talk about coming to terms with death. It comes up in their struggles. It comes up in therapy. It comes up when people get down to their core issues. It's there. It's eating at them. So be grateful. Own what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, because when I'm, you know, providing therapy, especially to non-Muslims, I feel it. I see how lucky we are that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this comprehensive way. Unfortunately, we don't own our deen the way we should, you know, because we think a lot of times people think people take it for granted because even we grew up with it, or we looked at it as just, this is my deen and this is my life. It's a comprehensive way of life designed to answer all of our questions. And so going back to connecting to our purpose and embracing and fully owning that our life is temporary, and connecting our heart with akhirah every day, going back to that, really it allows us to live our day with purpose, with meaning. And, this is how the Sahaba used to live, right? That they used to live their day as if they won't reach the evening. And they used to live their evening as if they won't reach the day. Can you imagine what a powerful day that was, that they experienced? I mean, the day that you live, think of people who know that they're dying. Look at the things they do. They start filtering out all the unnecessary baggage from their life. They start thinking about all the things they weren't doing, they were neglecting. It awakens them. Most of them don't fall into slumber. They fall into, what should I do? I only have a little bit of time. Because when something is temporary, it awakens that part of you. And so connecting with akhirah in reality, it connects you more to reality than illusion. It puts your life in perspective. You not only see your problems in the right way, but you also see your victories in the right way. You see your pain in the right way, and you see your happiness in the right way. It awakens your sense of responsibility. Like I said, people who know that they're dying, they start to really think about their responsibility towards their life. It empowers their choice. I remember, Rihab al-Birri, Allah yarhamha, I remember I was reading her blog. She used to keep a blog after she found out. She had it, I think, before she found out she was sick, but she wrote a lot after she found out that she had cancer. And I remember one of the things that really always stayed with me was when she got her diagnosis, she wrote about how when she left the room, the hospital, and she was thinking she went into that state where she was thinking about, how young she was and how she's dying and everyone else isn't, and and so she got this, she was reflecting on how she made a strong reflection about, she's like, yeah, I'm dying, but so is everyone else, right? It's no difference. I just know about, mine might be a little sooner, right? And Allahu A'lam, there's another sister who was in our community who got sick after her and died right before her, subhanAllah. And so but the point is that, then she talks about the things that she started paying attention to, like the friends that she keeps. She started evaluating the people that she surrounds herself with. She said, I decided I want people who are more attached to their purpose. I want people who care about their meaning in life. I don't want to have small talk anymore and talk about, things that really don't affect me on a personal level. It changed everything. It changed the way she viewed her, the way she, had social gatherings, the way she, wanted to live her life essentially. It changed everything. I really recommend, by the way, to look that blog up. It's very powerful. It's a powerful reminder of what, of how coming to terms with your death awakens your sense of responsibility in the way that you live your life. So, one of the ways that we can do this is to reflect on akhirah, to reflect on our meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to connect to ilm al-ghayb, right? Believing in the unseen is a key tenet of our faith. And if you think of, even in Surah Al-Baqarah, in the first few ayat, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Alif Lam Mim, right? He says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. Verily, this is a book in which there is no doubt, right? هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Guidance to those who have taqwa, to those who are conscious of Allah. And then he tells you who those people are. And you know what's really interesting about this ayah that comes next, that describes these people? Look at this ayah. It says, هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. What was the first thing? It wasn't salah. It was iman, faith in the unseen. يؤمنون بالغيب. That faith in the unseen comes before salah. Why? Because that connection with the reality that exists that you do not see affects even the most important tenet of ibadah. That it affects the way you go to salah. And if it affects the way you go to salah, it'll affect the way you live your life. So connecting with al-ghaib, taking the time to reflect, think of, when the tenets of faith, right? We're asked to believe in Allah, His books, His messenger, but also His angels, right? Why is that? I mean, we don't see the angels, right? Right? So it's something that it really empowers that connection with the reality and distance you from the illusion, which is this dunya. So connecting to al-ghaib and taking the steps to connecting to the unseen is a key factor to our stability, because it connects you to, what really is we're heading towards, our real destination. Thinking about, one thing that helps is when you do your adhkar, right? Like for example, after you pray and you say Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar 33 times each, we know that a tree is planted for us in Jannah, right? Many of us, we just say them. We don't connect to that. We don't connect that something is being built for us in our real home, right? Taking the time to actually visually connect as much as we can to use our imagination and to reflect on these things. This is how you utilize your mind to serve your heart, is that we have to really stray away from just this robotic way we experience our deen and the way we live our deen. We're so used to just automatically doing things that we don't take the time to actually connect to what we're doing. That everything that we do is actually supposed to connect you more to reality and more away from illusion. I think this is the next very, very, very crucial step towards gaining peace and stability is being present. One of the biggest thieves of our peace and stability is our inability to stay present, is our inability to stay in the moment, to stay in the reality of what exists in front of us. Once we let our mind wander into the future or the past, we ignore the peace and the opportunity that exists right in front of our eyes. So the past has passed and the future has not yet to come. In reality, they're both illusions, meaning they're not existing, right? They're not really existing. The only reality is your present. Your present is your current reality. And so how many times do we attach to illusion, ignoring actually what is actually existing, the reality? And the truth is, and this is a very key point, our suffering, when we suffer in life, it's because we're right there in that gap between where we really are and where we think we should be. Right? Existential psychology says that depression or suffering of any kind, really, it lies in the gap between where you are and where you think you should be. So basically, you're not in your present, right? And you're not really where you think you should be, so you're stuck. You're not enjoying where you are, and you're not yet where you think you should be. So you're stuck. And there's a lot of suffering that exists when we are stagnant, when we are stuck, because there's no hope there. Hope is an essential ingredient to feeling peace, right? But when you have an idea, remember we talked about happiness being the destination? Many times what we do is that we create a situation or a destination or a goal, right? Or an ideal image. And we make that basically the ideal of where we think we should be. And we associate that image with happiness. So we equate where we should be with happiness, right? So when I get to that, I'm going to be happy. When I get that career, I'm going to be happy. When I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you can think of something. When I arrive at where I want to be, I'm going to be happy, right? When I have a child, I'm going to be happy. You can think of a million things. When I get that car, I'm going to be happy, right? We associate where we want to be with happiness. So where is happiness? It's over there, right? Where is the present? I don't want to live in the present because it's not over there, so we push that away. And now I'm here, and I have nothing here. That's why we suffer, right? So when we stay present, and this takes a lot of work, by the way. Being present, especially in the world that we live in, where you pick up your phone, it takes your mind is constantly consumed with something else other than what actually exists in front of you. I mean, we live in a very fast-paced world, but it takes a lot of work, but it has many fruits. What does it mean to be present? It means that your heart is present. It means that your heart is engaged in what is happening in front of you. And in order for your heart to be present, the servant of your heart needs to be present, which is your mind. And we talked about our mind a little bit last time. And so the way you utilize your mind, if your mind is off wandering in the future or in the past, your heart is like, hello, who's gonna fuel me, right? It's empty, because it can't engage if the servant, is off doing something else. The heart wants to be present, but it has nothing to work with. And so we don't fuel it that way. So we're off somewhere else. But in order for our heart to fully engage in our life, our mind needs to be present. Our mind needs to be engaged in the thoughts and the reflections that will fuel our heart. And, staying present in our life actually enhances our experience in salah. I had a client one time who she was really struggling in salah. That was her biggest struggle. She never was able to really be present in salah, experience peace in salah. So we worked on this for months. But I remember one of the key questions that really changed the way her salah changed her salah, or the experience of salah, was that I asked her, outside of salah, do you have any time in your day where you're basically like quiet or in solitude, or you're not, it's not chaotic around you? And because she was telling me how, she lives a very fast-paced life. She goes to work, and when she comes home, she loves to listen to music or watch something, or relax. And I said, is there any time that you give to yourself where there's no noise? There's nothing, because we're programmed like this. We get in the car, we have to listen to something, right? We put it on. There's an agitation there with silence. We're not okay with silence. So when it came to her prayer, when it comes to our prayers, which is the 5 main times where we're actually shut off everything to make sure that we're focusing, we expect to zap into this mode of peace, right, and stability, and it's very difficult because we haven't trained our mind and heart to do so outside of prayer. And this is a shame, because then our prayer doesn't really give us what it's supposed to. So giving herself time in the day, even before prayer, to think about what she's about to do, to reflect, to give her time in the car when she's driving, to just be in solitude, to not be around so much noise. And dhikr is a great tool that allows us to stay present, right? Especially gratitude. So gratitude is one of those things that brings your present to life. There is no one on the face of the earth that has a life that's 100% bad. No one. There is always something to be beautiful. There's always something beautiful within our present life, no matter how horrible our condition is. And when we think our life sucks or that it's miserable, it really goes back to our inability to be present. It really goes back to our inability to be grateful for what already exists. Because if we took the time and we worked really hard, we will find something. We will find something. And trust me, once you start finding something, you won't stop. Start small. I mean, there's so much to be grateful for. I always say start small. Think of just the ability to get up and feel the earth under your feet. The ability to stand and have that stability and to be able to walk, right? Think of the fact that you're able to open your eyes in the morning. Start small, because once you start small, you will never stop. And so, take the time to be grateful of what already exists in front of you. And so when we say alhamdulillah, it shouldn't be lip service. It should be every alhamdulillah that you say you should be reflecting on something in your life that you're grateful for. Again, because our deen is a way of life. It's not just something that you do, we just lip service. Alhamdulillah, we said it 33 times and we move on our day, right? But when you actually take the time to use your mind as you're saying alhamdulillah, to reflect on something that you're actually grateful for, that's what engages the heart to connect to its source. And then when you do that, you'll always want to say alhamdulillah. It's much more than even gratitude. It's like, now it's even like ibadah for you constantly, right? I mean, it's become ibadah. It's become your way of connecting to Allah, and through that, your life has you're experiencing a more beautiful life just because of that quality and that exercise that you're doing. And non-Muslims will talk about this too. I mean, you'll see it on Oprah is always talking about the effects of gratitude and how subhanAllah, what they're saying about gratitude confirms what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. You know, if you are thankful to me, I increase you, right? وَإِن شَكَرْتُونِي أَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, right? It's like, if you are thankful, I increase you in what you have. This is a phenomena not just for us, this is a phenomena for everyone. Ask anyone that practices gratitude. You will find that they always feel like they have more, right? They will always feel like their life is just full of so much more that they can be grateful for. And even when you're being grateful, you come to a point where you even have to become grateful for being grateful. The fact that you are being grateful, that you are in a state of gratitude, that you are like seeing beauty in your life and everything that exists in front of you is a ni'mah from Allah. It is a blessing. Because there are many people who their lenses aren't seeing that. So this is a lifting of the veil that Allah has allowed you to experience, and for that you should be thankful for. So you won't stop, but start every day. We should be grateful. You know, I remember hearing a shaykh talk about shukr, and he was saying that when you wake up in the morning, we say, Alhamdulillah alladhi ahyaytana ba'da amatana wa ilayhi nushur, right? That you're thanking Allah for giving you life after death, right? He's saying that it's not Alhamdulillah alladhi ahyaytana ba'da amatana wa ilayhi nushur, it's Alhamdulillah alladhi ahyaytana. When you wake up in the morning, it's Alhamdulillah, because many people did not wake up. But this again is connecting ourselves to the reality of our situation, because we're so deluded to think that we have another day when we don't. So being present is very, very important. It takes a lot of work, and I really encourage you to, at least start with the adhkar, the morning dhikr and the evening dhikr, right? Because those are at least 2 times outside of your salah that you're taking the time. If you read these adhkar, the morning dhikr and evening dhikr, they're so comprehensive. You leave them, you feel like you got all the therapy you need, because it covers everything. It covers from your emotional well-being to your spiritual well-being to your physical well-being. It's so comprehensive. You feel like you got everything that you needed. But do it with meaning, do it with connection. Don't allow for your tongues to work without your mind and heart working. I don't think that's, yeah. So, and then one more step, inshallah, is that towards gaining peace and stability, is that we must learn to give ourselves what we seek from others. And so I'm not necessarily talking about self-care here in terms of giving time to yourself, or I'm talking about when it comes to our emotional agitation, that we must, a lot of times when we're emotionally agitated, we're programmed to just look for someone to help us soothe that emotion, right? To help us calm that agitation down. And I'm not discouraging anyone from seeking support or help. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about empowering our responsibility to understand and manage our own emotions. There's a whole intelligence to this. We know IQ, right? In regular intelligence based on how much we know and how much knowledge we have. There's actually a more powerful form of intelligence called emotional intelligence, EQ, which they have found to be highly correlated with one's success in life. Even when they did a research on, people in the workplace, they took a company and they did a research on, they took everyone's IQ and EQ, and they correlated that with their performance. They found that the people who had the higher IQ were actually more successful. So there is an intelligence and there's a level of skill that comes with understanding and managing your own emotions. When you are able to do that for yourself, you stop using people to fulfill those emotional needs for you, right? So we need to learn to be able to sit with our emotions. We experience an emotional agitation. What we do is we automatically react. We are so uncomfortable that it's so hard for us to actually just sit with that emotion, to just, even though we're feeling pain right now, to just sit down and feel that pain. We don't want to. Right? We want someone to take it away. We get on the phone and we want to vent. We basically are so uncomfortable that we want to get rid of it. Again, it goes back to our feel-good culture, our instant gratification mode. So our inability to sit with it and experience that emotion does not allow us to understand it. Again, it goes back to the beginning. If you resist something, right, you can't allow it in to fully understand what it has to say. And so it's very important that we learn to allow the emotion to come in and embrace it and sit with it so that we can understand it. Because you can't know how to control or regulate something if you don't understand it. And when you don't understand it, that emotion controls you, right? So when you feel an emotional agitation, instead of picking up the phone to call a friend or find something to soothe it, sit with it for a little bit, right? Be uncomfortable for a little bit. Ask yourself these questions. What emotion am I experiencing right now? What is it? Can you even pinpoint it? Many of us, we go to the next person, I'm so frustrated right now, and we don't even know what caused that frustration. We don't even know why we're feeling a certain way. All we know is something happened, I felt a certain way, I need to get rid of it, right? What emotion am I experiencing? Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it sadness? Is it grief? What is it? And what triggered it? What happened before that experience to trigger it? Because a lot of times we can't pinpoint what triggered it. You could have a conversation with someone and then afterwards you could feel agitated, frustrated, and then you take that frustration to the next experience and you don't even know where it began and what happened in that conversation. The person didn't really say anything that was obviously disrespectful or anything like that, but you know that you walked away from that conversation feeling agitated, you go home and you're just frustrated with everyone, right? Because we are not self-aware. We were not really taught to be aware of what exists within us, right? So we need to take the time to sit with ourselves and ask ourselves, what triggered this feeling that I have? And why did that experience trigger it? What was it? Is there a reason that that particular statement, triggered me? Is there a reason that the way that person acted triggered me? What is it? Because two people can have the same experience and one cannot be triggered and one can be. Why? Because it's the way we experience that situation. So, for example, when you feel fear towards something, and a lot of times, think of the media today, right? And how it's, promoting all this fear towards Muslims, right? If a person who's viewing this, say a non-Muslim who doesn't, who just all he knows is he understands this, he just feels this fear, right? Without understanding it, fear in the absence of knowledge, what does it do? It just causes you to react, right? Same thing with our regular emotions, is that, with fear in the absence of your awareness and knowledge, it's going to cause you to just react. And how many times do we do this? We always react, right? The key is to learn to respond. And responding and reacting are two different things. Reaction is very impulsive. It's like, I feel something, react. Responding requires something in between, which is reflection, right? Because you're choosing the way that you respond. So then, after you understand it, we have to accept it. We have to say, yeah, I feel this way. Validate it. Because a lot of times what essentially we're doing is we're looking for other people to validate our emotional experience. We feel a certain way, we want someone else to tell us, it's okay that you're feeling that way, right? Why can't we give that to ourselves? Why can't we empower our personal responsibility and give that to ourselves? Because not all the time you're going to find someone who's going to tell you that's okay. You might go talk to someone and say, yeah, why are you feeling that way, right? Or that's people who minimize your emotions, right? Say you shouldn't feel that way, or that's really silly, or whatever. Validate your own emotion. It's there for a reason, right? Validate it, accept it. Say it's okay to feel this way. I feel this way. It's an emotion. It's a feeling. Can you eliminate it? You can't, right? In that moment, you can't just completely eliminate the emotion. So accept it. It's there. That's what acceptance is. You're acknowledging the reality of its existence. It's there. You resisting it does not help you. You're using more energy to get rid of the emotion than you're actually using to find out what to do with it. So, being able to look at your emotions in this way and say, okay, I feel this way. It's okay that I feel this way. I understand why I feel this way. Now, how do I respond? Okay? And so, in that reality, what you're doing is you're soothing yourself. If a person, for example, in therapy, if a person comes up to me and says, or, a client or someone who's struggling comes up to me and says, they're in a very emotionally agitating state. I'm not going to tell them what to do with it right away, right? I'm not going to give them any advice about what to do. My main concern or goal is to make sure that agitation is calmed down. Because when you're emotionally agitated, emotions are very powerful, they're very strong. They don't when they're not regulated, when they're not calmed down, you cannot really fully absorb what to do next, right? So when you have someone that comes to you in an emotionally agitating state, don't worry about telling them what to do or what not to do. They're not going to really hear you, right? They're not concerned about that right now. All they feel is this emotional agitation. They want it to be calmed down. They want it to be soothed. So that's what you do with yourself. That's what you do with someone that comes to you with an emotional struggle, is that your main concern is to calm them down, to tell them that it's okay, to validate their experience, right? So, to connect with them, to make sure that, that they feel human in the process, right? That they don't feel wrong or flawed in the process. And a lot of times what we do is that, we don't do with ourselves what we do with other people. So I remember this woman, she was a woman in her 40s, and she was telling me how her whole life she's just been beating herself down, right? She says, I never get a break. I'm always very highly self-critical. She's like, I'm always beating up myself for the littlest things. And so I asked her, I said, she was talking about a specific situation. I asked her, what would you do if you have a friend who came to you with this situation? She said, I would tell her, that it's okay, that, this experience is normal, it's human to feel this way, and that, just like calm her down. I said, why can't you do that with yourself? She was completely shocked. She was like, I never thought of that. I never thought that I could do that for myself. Because we think that in order for us to change, we have to be harsh with ourselves, right? That no, do not feel this way. I cannot feel this way. I have to be like this. I have to be that ideal image, right? So, but your present is telling you that this is what exists, right? So accept it. Accept it, and then acceptance does not make you passive. When you accept an emotion or a difficult experience, it does not mean that you don't want the experience to go away. It does not mean that you don't want to change. Actually, acceptance means that you're willing to understand the experience and the emotion so that you can change it. But we have this idea that if I accept something, I'm passive. So I'm going to, roll up my sleeves and I'm going to resist it as much as possible, because that's proactiveness, right? But in reality, it's not. It has the opposite effect. So working to give yourself what you're looking for others to give you. There's a personal responsibility. You're not, think about your life. We empower ourselves in other ways, right? We empower ourselves. We go out and we search for a job, right? We don't just wait there for someone to give it to us, right? We have this independent personal responsibility culture, right? That you don't victimize yourself, that you go out and get what you want, right? Also, when it comes to your emotional struggles, understand yourself, understand your emotions, and know how to give yourself what you are sitting there waiting for others to give you, right? People are constantly waiting for other people to come in and give them what they're looking for emotionally. Maybe things that they've lacked growing up, right? That they're waiting for other people to come in their lives and give it to them. But you're missing out on how empowering it is to exercise your power of responsibility, your power of choice, to choose to give yourself what you are looking and depending on others to give you. And you know what that does? It stops making people an extension of you. If we can teach parents to do this, right? They will stop making their children an extension of them. Meaning that, sometimes, a lot of times, or anybody else, people, they get married to validate a certain thing, right? And they have kids to validate a certain thing, right? To validate a certain emotional need. And their kids and their spouses and everyone around them, their loved ones, become an extension of who they are. But when you learn to empower yourself, you are an independent person, right? And you teach others to be an independent person. It's not necessarily mean that we're not going to depend on each other, because we are there to support each other, but it's in a healthy way. It's not in a way that is, let's say selfish, right? Because a lot of times we don't lean on each other in a healthy way. We lean on each other in a way that is more about our needs than theirs, right? And so a lot of times this is about learning the healthy way in which to deal with our emotions, in the way that we depend on others, and the way that we go to others, And we know this. Like, people can only tolerate you dumping your emotional situation on them for so long, right? Even the most patient of people will not tolerate it that much, right? They will get to a point where they will realize that there's something that you're not doing to regulate your own emotions, right? And we need to empower ourselves and our responsibility when it comes to this. And so I think I went a little bit too. Okay, so I will wrap up by saying this, that I propose that it's not happiness that we should be seeking, right? It's liberation. Because it is through liberation that we find peace. And if you think of the process of tazkiyah, purification of the heart, its essential purpose is liberation. It's really the process of liberation. Because you're liberating your heart from the shackles of your nafs, right? And so this is why tazkiyah is so ingrained in everything that we do. Because you're constantly using your mind to reflect. You're constantly empowering, yourself to understand why you do the things you do. And you're making sure that you're sincere in doing the things that you do. You're reflecting on why you're doing the things that you do. It increases your self-awareness. It increases your emotional intelligence, your understanding and managing your own emotions. Tazkiyah is in reality liberation. And that's what we should be seeking. We should be seeking liberation. Happiness comes and goes, right? But liberation is something that stays with you, because regardless of what's going on around you, your external states, inside your liberated soul, your liberated heart. That's it for now. Jazakumullah khairan, and I'll take any questions. Okay, no questions? All right, jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.